From Bossier City, Louisiana, this is the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And welcome back to episode 7 of the Grouch and the Brainstorm. My name's Mike, and I'm here today with Jenn. Say hi, Jenn.
Hey, guys.
Matt.
Hey.
Jill.
Yellow.
And as an added bonus, and this is not a bonus episode, we brought in Chris C. from the Koala Club to sit in. Yeah, welcome, Chris.
How's it going?
It's going pretty good, man. So today we are going to talk about step 2, which in the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And we're going to give a little bit of our experience, strength, and hope with coming to believe in that. So I think what we'll do is we're going to open it up for going around, but we're going to start this week with Jill and her a little bit of experience with coming to believe. Hit it, Jill.
All right, let's talk about step 2. So step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could return us to sanity. Well, first of all, I feel like there were so many things when I first read this that I was like, wait, hold up. First of all, you're saying I'm insane. Rude.
Hold up.
Rude. Right. And so that took, a little bit for me to get my head around because, I thought I really had things together, even though they so weren't. And at that time, I'd learned that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Sanity can also mean many other things, but I was insane. I'd been doing the same stuff for decades, and I just couldn't figure out what the problem was. I mean, like, no shit.
Me neither.
Like the whole time, it was like, Scooby-Doo mystery. It was me, and I was just shocked.
Behind the mask.
You're right. And that was wild, coming to that epiphany that it was me the whole time. But, the thing about this step, and this is where I almost started to panic, due to my lack of faith or spirituality or pretty much anything in my life, is that I had to come to believe in a power greater than myself. Whoa. What? And at that time, I didn't know what it was. And I didn't even really know what I wanted it to be. And I had a great sponsor that was just like, made me like kind of map out all the characteristics and qualities that I want to be, that I would want in my higher power. And I did that. And she goes, there's your higher power. And I was like, what? You can do it just like that? Because I was literally thinking of like, Mother Mary, Jesus, Buddha. I mean, like people. And I didn't know you could just like create your own. But I mean, of course, there's different aspects to my higher power and things that I've chosen, and it really works for me. But what I also liked about this is that this isn't a definitive like seal of your higher power. It says came to believe. It doesn't say like this is it. You're set, and it's almost just like, okay, well, you're on your way, start practicing this because you're coming to believe in this deal. And step 2 is really early in recovery. I mean, at this point in my recovery, I was still stuttering. I stuttered for like weeks and weeks. I couldn't make sentences, and I thought like something was seriously wrong with me. And at the same time, you want me to find a higher power. And I mean, at that point, I was willing to believe in something. I mean, I've always believed that there was something. I just didn't know what it was. And I started at that time. That's when my counselor was like, Jill, you really need to start praying. And I was like, I mean, like, I don't know what to say. And at that time, I was still like, I was very freaked out that I'd have panic attacks without my Xanax. And, they stripped that of me, which was rude. I didn't come there for Xanax. But I'm just kidding. No hard feelings.
Yes.
I needed to get off that shit. So she goes, you can first start by surrendering. I was like, I don't really know what that means, but I started praying for that. I started praying about the panic attacks, like big things. And those things started to change. And when I look back over, what happened in my early recovery, those were really huge miracles to me. The fact that my panic attacks went away after almost 20 years of being sedated on Xanax, I just poofed gone. And that was big. That was really big. And so, I don't know, like, I was scared to death at this point of my recovery. I didn't know what that step entailed, but I knew it enough to know, okay, I've identified what I want my higher power to be. I'm starting to pray, and I'm starting to surrender. And that's all I think I needed at that point. Because, of course, you grow spiritually, throughout the steps. And when you grow, when you go through the steps multiple other times, and every time that I've gone through the steps, I've been able to grow that much closer to my higher power. But this is the thing, like, I don't feel like I'm insane anymore, and that's kind of wonderful. I know that I very well could go back to that if I don't practice, the principles, or practice the steps, or do the things I need to stay spiritually fit.
Is it just me, or does anybody think that the steps just kind of like transform, like from when you first look at them, and then as you do them over and over again, little words popped up like twos and these that I missed.
Absolutely.
And so this is it's very much a simple program, but it's for complicated people, and I can overthink and complicate the mess out of things. And so it's step 2. I thought that I needed to know everything about God, and I needed to know have this concrete higher power, and I needed to know the book, all of the Bible, from
the meaning
Genesis
of life,
to Revelation, to all of it, and really, it's really simple. It's right there, but I missed it in the beginning. It is all I have to believe at this point, that there is a God and I'm not him,
right?
And, or whatever that conception of everybody else is. For me, it was him.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, at that point in my recovery, I was like, it scared me so much because it said higher power in it. And to me, it was like, it said, you need to be a nun.
Yeah. I thought, okay, I'll do this, going to meetings, but I am not going to be at the Bible or the Baptist church reading the Bible.
Serious, that's what I thought. I panicked.
I'm not going to be, in the worship group and all this other things. But, for me, the first time I attempted the steps, and I wasn't even half measuring them, I was quarter measuring them at this point, but I was down into step 3, and I was struggling with 3. I didn't really have a grasp on 2. And so what I have found, if I am struggling with 2, then I haven't fully conceded that I am powerless over alcohol, and that my life is unmanageable. I mean, a monkey could have seen my life and said, dude, your life is unmanageable, but I couldn't see it. Mm-hmm. And that's because I was managing my own life. It was ridiculous. Yeah. But, I thought I could do such a better job than this sky fairy up in the, because all he wanted to do was rain down fire and brimstone and smite me, or, send me to hell. So I thought.
Right. But it's so cool how it works. It all works out in the end and all comes together, and you're like,
right. You have this aha light bulb
moments. It all comes together, and you're like, I see where you were going with this.
It was weird for me. My dad was a pastor, so I grew up in church my whole life. So I had all this preconceived stuff that I had done away with in my head, years of running around doing my own thing. And what was so crazy was I go to treatment, and I was in there a long time. So a lot of time on your hands, and when you've been in there repeating the program that they have for 30 days 3 times, you're a slow learner, like me. That's what happens. But I started questioning. We would do worksheets on 1, 2, and 3. We didn't actually do the steps, but so it was on my mind. And I remember talking to the techs that worked on the men's wing, and 2 of them were pastors, and they were both in recovery. One of them had 8 years, one of them had about 1.5 years. And I was like, man, I grew up in church, I'm like y'all said, I'm not going to be a nun either. You know what I'm saying? I'm not doing it. And they went, dude, you're way overthinking this. you know, and they were pastors from religious, you know, that branch of the deal. And they were like, have you actually ever like read anything in the Bible yourself, or had you just been told stuff? And I was like, I don't know, you know. So we would sit out there at
You
night.
don't know if you read the Bible.
Well, I mean, I read it.
Did
but,
you read it in a drunk?
not
maybe?
read it. Well, I don't know, but we would sit out there at night, the last hour or two before bed, and lights out, and we would sit and talk, you know, and we would go through that part really slow, and it was so simple. And they were like, dude, nobody's asking you to, like, you're not Billy Graham. We get that, you know, but you can start to understand things that are going on. And mine was so simple getting out that every day I went, here's how we're going to find out if there is a power greater, because I've been using and drinking for 25 years and I've screwed everything up, and I haven't gone one day without doing those things. So the more days in a row when I get up and say, please help me not to do this today, and I don't do them, there was the power greater than myself. It was shown to me, because I went, there's no other explanation, because it's not me. And that developed from there, and it was just that simple, starting out and saying thank you at the end of the day. So
I love how even the steps are secular, you know, because at step 2 it says, by coming to believe in a power greater than myself, I'm restored to sanity. But by the time get down to step 10, those step 10 promises like come in.
Oh yeah.
And it's I can flip step 2 around at step 10 and say, by coming to believe in a power greater than myself, I have been restored to sanity. I know that we're not on step 10, but I love how it, like you said, it kind of all ties in together, and it's kind of like I have to take all 12 of them to fully get that, and I can't do the 1, 2, 3 out, or 1, 2, okay, what's God's will? Let's go to Google, and then, you know, take 15 months to do a 4th step. That didn't really work for me.
yeah. I wasn't allowed to take that
Are
long.
you
I was
speaking
put
from
on
personal
clock.
experience?
Okay, it
Wasn't
wasn't
allowed to
15
think.
months. It might have been like 4.
Oh, okay.
And then that was,
Yeah.
but, you know, if you ever, does anybody ever pull out their first step work, their
I
written
do it
stuff,
with-
and like crack
yeah.
up laughing at how just,
I've done it with sponsees, and I think they go, I have one right now, and I was like, dude, I do the same stuff I'm asking you to do, and I explained to them, I've done the exact same stuff you're writing down, I've written down, and like, usually along the way with one of them, I'll bring in one of my steps and go, and throw it on the table, and they go, oh, that's exactly what I'm doing, and I go, yes, sir, it's done, and yes, they are silly, because I go,
I mean, my first 4 step, like I was like cleaning out my room or something, I just like felt, and then of course I got distracted. And, you know, I'm sitting there cracking up laughing at this crap for hours. But, you know, that's the miracle in that self, too, is
it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then.
the
Right.
change
No.
that takes place in your life,
Yeah.
in recovery,
You changed,
when
you
you
know?
allow a higher power to come in and restore you to
Right.
sanity.
Yeah. Oh
Going
yeah.
back and
It's
reflecting.
it is funny. I mean, I pull them out and I'm like, oh my goodness, like what was I doing? You know, and it wasn't that long ago, but
Or what was I, or how clueless was I?
Yeah.
But, you know, that book, those steps, they grow as I grow. Like, they change. And I see words that I never saw before. Somebody, you know, with a little bit more recovery that knows the book better than me points out a word, and then it really it stops me and makes me, you know, re-question my whole thought process. But at the end of the day, it's not what I think that book means. It's not what I think that step means. It's what did the author intend for it to mean. So I need to go back and research or link up with somebody that knows the book better than me, or like a sponsor, or, you know, read some of the other literature to kind of see what angle he was going at with some of that stuff.
this is funny you brought this up, because I do this sometimes, and this is not even this guy. I wouldn't even say I was his sponsor, but he's just a dude that I've known, and he's got special needs. I'll put it that way.
Right.
He's not all the way there, but he tries in his own way to do what he
Okay.
can. And so what we do is gratitude list. And when he gets kind of, he doesn't really, you'd have to know him, but he's not all there.
Mm-hmm.
But we do gratitude lists. Well, we did them for a few years, and he'd go, oh, and he'd be griping, and I go, hey, dude, do it, write a gratitude list. Write 3 things you're happy for. So he would text me. He still does it today, and we don't even see each other that much. And he texted me one the other day. I was having a rough day, and he writes like a little kid. He's 40 years old, and he wrote, Learned to make a pizza in the microwave today. Didn't burn it too bad. It was good, actually.
Can you burn one in the microwave?
Yeah, I mean,
you
I don't know
can.
how you got one in the microwave, but it just
microwave.
was like, I was like, oh, that's, and I hang on to that stuff.
Well,
you
they
know?
have those frozen pizzas that come, like the little linguine
DiGiorno
ones,
or
like the
something,
personal ones.
yeah.
I don't know.
Like
He was just glad he didn't destroy it.
And he's
So,
grateful for that.
Yeah. And I mean, simple things, you know?
Well, I mean,
There's
it's
another-
just coming to believe is
Sure.
quite
Yeah.
simple. It's whatever you believe.
Yeah, I'm
You just
grateful
have
for
to come to believe it.
I'm grateful for pizza as well.
We all are.
Yeah. I don't know.
Mine was that good orderly direction though. I had a
Yeah.
hard time with that because I had shared in a meeting the other day that God was up there somewhere like with Santa Claus,
Yeah.
right? So I stopped getting present at a pretty early age, So when I felt like I was getting punished, I felt like maybe it's because I wasn't worthy enough. But for me, coming into the rooms of AA after treatment, because in treatment we didn't have any representation from AA and didn't really know a whole lot about AA or any other groups that could help out as like an aftercare program. And so, coming into the rooms and just listening, and Joe said it best, like you can, he wasn't really comparing church versus whatever, just he was directing it towards newcomers. And it said, in AA, you're just going to just keep coming back. You could go to church and tell them you robbed 6 banks, but you go to AA and you tell them you only robbed 5 on the way there. We'll keep coming back, And so, that kind of stuff, stuck with me. But after that good orderly direction of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was able to come to believe. And it's great. It just gets better and better every day. So,
do you have any sponsees yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
I'm this is not to put you on the spot by no means. When you get to step 2 with your sponsees, where in the big book do you think you're going to discuss that?
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I don't know. I think it's something. I know that's something I'll have to sit down with my sponsor on, and I've got a feeling, whenever that time does come, my first couple of sessions with my sponsee is going to happen with my sponsor.
Direction of a sponsor.
Just to make sure that we're on the same beat of path.
Well, the reason I asked that, steps 3 through 12 are basically lined out in the big book.
Yeah.
And they're in italics out to the side, or they're in italics, and I wrote out to the side 1, 2, 3, So they're very clearly defined. But step 1 and step 2 are not clearly defined. And step 2 words, the way it is worded is came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. It doesn't say came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. Right. So a lot of times we agnostics, the book, the chapter We Agnostics, and that's where we get step 2. And I heard a speaker 2 weeks ago, talk about exactly that. Well, we're step 2 in the big book, and he reads a paragraph or a sentence, and that is his definition of where step 2 is. And we probably all do that because up until recently, that's exactly where I would go, is to this exact paragraph that this gentleman had to say, right? But we're not trying to convince somebody there's a power greater than ourselves. We agnostics is basically written for those folks who just don't know, maybe don't believe or they just don't know. But then there's the part in the step that says came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, right? So I think if I'm going to come to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to sanity, I probably already need to believe in that power.
Yeah.
That is something that I already need to have, is that. So, talk about overcomplicating a really simple step, but I've since went back and thought more about step 2. And I will probably continue, with my guys as far as the direction and let them, their spiritual guidance take them wherever they want to go. But, it says in the big book, and I've got the chapter pulled up here, but this is where I always do step 2, right here in We Agnostics, where it says we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe or am I willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself?
I had the opportunity to lead the steps in the half past 5 step study, and I just did step 2, and I noticed in We Agnostics that a lot of it it's evidence of not you have to believe in a higher power, but it is just willingness was enough. And there was a lot of evidence of the first, the founders and the first 100, their experience of, even if you know little about God or you don't know anything about God, just being willing was sufficient.
And that's my experience with me and with other people, is like that just sort of starts that journey. You know what I mean? Like I know what Mike's saying, but also I think most people come in here and you say God word and they just freak out. They're like, I'm out,
Yeah.
And for a lot of people that I've talked to, I've asked the same thing with them, and that almost, it starts the process of that. And by the time they're wrapping up the steps, it's like, oh, wait a minute, like I'm actually have some type of spiritual thing going on here,
So like my sponsor had brought it up best to me when we were, when you start talking about faith and willingness to believe, right? And specifically with this, he told me, we can't see the inside of our organs, right? So we can't see that blood is going to the organs, and you pump into the heart, and you're able to
organ, man.
You're able. Well, you see that you're seeing all that, right? But if we can't see that, we just have enough faith and willingness to believe that all that stuff is working, so that we're able to sit here and talk and breathe and do the things that we do. And it was the same thing with taking that leap and that willingness to believe that there was a power greater than myself. And so that really, really opened my eyes up. And when you put it in that perspective, it was night and day. It's like, oh, light bulb clicked.
But it's like, Jill, it's like you said about your panic attacks that just quit.
Yes.
You haven't had them.
No, I haven't had one since I got sober.
Isn't that weird? And then it's just a coincidence that...
I don't think it's a coincidence.
I mean, you know what I mean, though? Like, I'm doing that in quotations, but I mean, like...
Yeah.
That's funny how that works,
Well, the biggest evidence is how many... there's 5 of us sitting at this table. We've got multiple years combined, and not one of us has taken a drink since we picked up the Desire chip.
There was nothing more evident to me than me not drinking and using every day.
That's pretty much a given. Yeah, that's one of the first things that caught me, and I already had a power greater than myself when I came into the rooms. I just had a hard time believing. I didn't connect the dots. That power greater than myself. What's that got to do? I got a drinking problem. I don't. I couldn't connect those dots. I had to come to believe that.
There's a whole lot of other people that know me that are more believers in God because of my situation than even I am.
Yeah.
They're like, there has to be one because this is a miracle.
So what do you do when somebody comes in and they're this is an example. Somebody comes in and Jesus is their best friend, they're Jesus freak, and you tell them, okay, that's great, but that's going to be your solution. Like, how do you connect the dots, like you were saying?
Well, basically, it was put to me. I wasn't, I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Jesus freak, but I was very well, I believed, and had no doubt whatsoever. And basically, my sponsor just said, "Hey, man, what you're going to have to do is build a better relationship with whatever it is, with Jesus or God or whatever it is. You're going to have to build a better relationship because what you're doing ain't working." And
right.
And he was very right. I was thinking when I first got in there, I was thinking that I was going to have to change higher powers. Because I read, I would hear things like our old ideas had to be smashed, or take the conception of God that you want, and all these things that go completely against how I was raised. And I was thinking that I was going to have to just completely throw out my old doctrine, which I was not willing to do. I was actually
contradictive, huh?
I was actually willing to continue life outside of AA and try not to drink white knuckling it before I would be willing to give that up. And I'll go back, but when I got married the first time, my wife was Catholic, and it was a real big deal for me to convert. And you're talking about high school sweetheart and the whole fixing to build a family, the whole 9 yards. I refused to convert. I would not give up my personal beliefs, and nor would I today for anything. I come in AA, and again, I complicate a very simple matter. Come to find out, I don't have to do anything except for take what I've got and make it better, build on it, because God ain't gone nowhere. He's been the exact same spot since I've been out there doing my stuff. I'm the one that has came and gone. I just got to come to believe. And I got all that information from a Catholic priest on a YouTube video.
Was it Father Martin?
I'm
The
thinking
Choctaws.
I'm thinking it was, but
I love those.
I got all of that information from a Catholic priest, and again I was not Catholic and refused to be Catholic, you know, and for a long time I identified as Catholic, even though I wasn't Catholic. It was just easier to identify as Catholic because when you bring up Pentecostal, you get a certain antipathy maybe from your guests, your friends. Hey, I'm Pentecostal. Let's go streaking down the gymnasium. You know what I mean?
Where's the snakes?
Yeah, that's the way you hear that.
Yeah, I had
Were you
a
wearing your skirt?
gentleman. He's gone to the Fellowship of the Spirit, but you know, he was Pentecostal and he was hardcore on that doctrine. But he begged me for me to go to church with him, and you know, for the longest time, contempt prior to investigation, I refused. I'm like, no. And finally, I was like, okay, I'll go. But if they get out snakes, and I'm out.
I'm out.
And I went, and it was really no different than going to a Baptist church or any other. Just they started speaking in a weird language, some of them, and I'm like, well, I don't know what that is, but you know, I get it now. But
Well, that's a good example. I'm glad you brought that up because no matter what anybody visiting that church thinks, those people, especially that one speaking in that language, has came to believe.
exactly.
They came to believe that whatever it is that they believed, and therefore cannot be changed. And as the step is asking me, I'm coming to believe that a power greater than myself can restore me to a period of time when a drink was not the first thing I thought about. It's not necessarily, you know, if you look at the term, if you Googled AA insanity, if you Googled it right now, you're going to get 3 or 4 different things. And one of those things is being perfectly sober, being physically sober and picking up that first drink. So what I'm doing is I'm asking this higher power to restore me to a time where drinking wasn't something I thought about all the time. And that goes back even more into the book of We Agnostics, where it says lack of power was our dilemma. And we had to find a power by which we could live that would solve all of our problems. And I didn't have the power to not drink. I just didn't. So I had to come to believe that this power that was bigger than me, that I've always believed in, was going to restore me to a state of where a drink just wasn't my go-to. It wasn't a great idea, you know, but after a bad day, you know, talking to a sponsor is really not that bad of a thing after a bad day. You know, I mean, getting drunk was always a bad thing, right? Maybe even listening to a sponsor every once in a while, still not a bad thing. But getting drunk, no matter how we look at it, is never a good thing. And the insanity for me was I was always thinking about a drink. And that's insane because I knew how bad that drink was going to do me. I ain't never had a drink do me right, man. I haven't. I got a long history of drinking, or I probably wouldn't be sitting here in front of this microphone with you guys, you know, and none of them have ever just done me right. So that's where that insanity comes from. And I'll take it up a notch. That can be anything. It can be alcohol. It can be anything.
Anything that changed the way that I feel.
Yeah. Or just anything, period. I mean, I'm a workaholic. I mean, I know that. I've never done the steps on it, but I don't go to work and screw up everybody's lives either. But you know, if I really and truly think that maybe it's time for me to step away from that because that's my go-to, you know, I'm more comfortable there than I am here. And it may be more than just drinking or working or shopping or eating or whatever it is, right? It is, I can believe this power is going to restore me to sanity, and it is. And, you know, whether or not you got to apply all 12 steps to this situation, that's completely between you and your higher power, your sponsor, whatever, you know. But I do know that there's more in my life that I would consider insane, maybe not today, but there's more in my life that I would consider insane than I would just drinking. You know, drinking was just a symptom for me, you know, and I don't know about anybody else, but it was just a symptom for me. And once I got down to the root causes, you know, that higher power helped that symptom, you know. But all I had to do was come to believe. And it didn't matter if Matt believed it. It didn't matter. You know, I'm not here to portray an image of someone who believes. But I've sponsored people who didn't, okay? Sponsored people who just absolutely would not accept the God idea. But they had to accept an idea, you know. And if I'm thinking about this really, really well, if I get thrown in jail for, let's just say, 10 years, and I don't accept the fact that the court system is a higher power, and they're putting me there for physical and mental rehabilitation to restore me to sanity, I'll probably get out in 10 years and go exactly back to what I'm doing.
Do the same thing.
But if I go to jail and go, power greater than myself stuck me in here, let me give it a whirl at what these guys have to offer, I'm liable to get out of jail 10 years later and be a rehabilitated human being. I'm not willing to test that theory. It just doesn't sound fun, you know. But you see where I'm going with that. It's just coming to believe that it's an attitude change. For me, it was an attitude change in a higher power and what the purpose of that higher power was, you know. Because up until then, it was like Chris was talking about, you know, gimme, 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 gimme. I didn't get any of it, and you know, well, that ain't working. Let me move on to the next best thing. So give me a drinking problem. You know, oh, I got it. Yeah, worked out horrible.
Yeah, for me, I loved how, you know, God removed the desire to drink for me early on. But then I was left with the real problem.
Me?
And
like the me part?
Yeah.
Yeah. The real problem was me sitting in that chair and without getting into the 12 steps or the rest of the steps, I had no solution to me. So I'm still managing my own life. My alcoholism just starts manifesting in other ways and other things. And I'm still trying to fix me with me. And that just didn't work. And if it would have worked, I wouldn't have needed Alcoholics Anonymous. I wouldn't continue to need Alcoholics Anonymous. So it's the drink, yes, for sure is a symptom of the problem. And some people, I feel like they're like, well, I'm never going to drink again. And I'm like, well, you still need Alcoholics Anonymous because you're the problem. I'm the problem.
And I'm thinking, you know, we often whenever we get in, especially when we join a new group, and which is rare for most of us. And you know, Chris, obviously this is probably new, but you know, in every group you get in, you have that same cast of characters, and you have the same roundabout discussions over and over the course of time. And recovered versus recovery is one that I've you know, and I've seen them waste a good 30 minutes of a meeting splitting hairs over what's recovered versus recovery, you know. And to be quite honest with you, I have recovered from alcoholism. The big book tells me that it does.
A hopeless state of mind and body.
But I have not recovered from Mike, which was the problem to begin with. And hopefully I never will, because, well, that's just not, you know, the
probably
solution.
Stop coming back.
Well, probably stop going anywhere once I recover completely.
Nunchucks and, you know.
Yeah, you know, and you know, the nunchuck problem, well, that's a whole another episode. We'll have to, you know, my addiction to nunchucks came about in the early 80s whenever, you know, Bruce Lee was still alive. But, you know, we won't have to talk about that. But you hear those things, the splitting hairs. I had a guy, though, tell me. Now, he didn't tell me. He told us in a meeting. He was an old-timer. And he said, you know, I can walk out of my house and standing on the front porch and I can get shot. And that bullet go into my body, tear me up, you know, and I go to the doctor and they fix me up. They heal me. And after 6-8 weeks, maybe a few months, I'm completely recovered from that gunshot wound. But it doesn't mean I can't get shot again. And, you know, when he said that, obviously you still have your naysayers in there and just whatever. But, you know, it is one of those things. But how we got off on that subject, I don't know. But the one thing that I find whenever I visit with my sponsees is that we have to get across, because this is what that Catholic priest got across to me, is coming to believe that power is going to restore me to sanity and that I can't. He's not going to come in and say, I tell you what, I'm going to be here until you can figure this out by yourself, and then I'm out of here. I got the next drunk to work with. Mm-hmm. he still restored me to sanity today. He still is in that, it's that relationship with that higher power that keeps me sober. Meetings are great. This is great. What we're doing right here, sponsorship is great. But when I lose that relationship with that higher power, well, all bets are off. So.
Well, and the thing about it, going back to what you said about recovered versus recovery, I have recovered from that hopeless state of mind and body. But I'm still sitting here with the quote unquote phenomenon of craving, the allergy to alcohol. So if somebody was highly allergic to peanuts, they don't sit around obsessing about eating jars of peanut butter, and the alcoholic, whether we know we have the allergy or not, I'm still, without the aid of a higher power, obsessed with, I know this shit's going to kill me, but I still continue to drink it. And I can't tell you why. I still think that I'm going to, this time I'm going to drink water and do push-ups in between the shots, or I'm not going to drink shots, or, I'm going to, whatever things that I did so I wouldn't get annihilated. But I got annihilated every time. And then, boy, we forget. My forgetter was broke. Right. 3 days later, I'm like, well, I'm never drinking again.
Just goes back to that rationalization.
5 o'clock, here we go again.
Now that guy at that speaker meeting a couple weeks ago, Matt, I don't think you were there, but he talked about, you sit down at the bar and you have that drink that you ain't supposed to have, and then all of a sudden you change your mind. We call it phenomenon of craving. We call it whatever we want to call it, these big wordy words, but you change your mind. I'll just have 2. Okay, I'll have 5. Okay, I'll have, and then after a while you're, F it. I'll just, and then you're pounding on the bar trying to figure it out, but you just change your mind. And the phenomenon of craving, I believe, my personal belief, and this is after many trips over to bed and breakfast over there, I personally believe that the alcohol has altered my mind physically in a state to where I cannot safely have alcohol, because if I had alcohol, my mind would physically crave it. And once it craves it, my attitude that I currently have towards alcohol, which is I can't drink it, step 1, would change. And then it's off to the races. And then, of course, do it all over again, hopefully, provided I can get back. I'm sure I can't physically handle the amount of liquor that I could handle back whenever I stopped. But I do. I believe that that's a good, it's not a disease in the sense that I get a special parking sticker.
Nope.
We all should.
We should.
Yeah, you should get Sky Miles, man. If I had Sky Miles for all the liquor I drank, I would. Oh, Lord.
We make a lot of trips.
I was thinking the other day.
Call it jet fuel.
If drinking built muscles, you and I would be like Mr. and Mrs. Olympia by now.
I wouldn't be over here trying to imitate Matt.
Well, that's what me and Matt thought we had going on when we got here. Apparently, it didn't work out for us in the muscle building sense.
All that being said, and I was telling Mike and Chris this right before we got on there, and this doesn't happen that much today. But I have a friend, he's been on this podcast that works with me. He was in the office this afternoon. I've been dealing with an employee issue that's been going on for a while. And this guy pulled something this afternoon, real sneaky. And he's been doing that for a while. And I went to 100. It just was like flipping a switch, And I don't do that very much. And this person in the program was sitting at the other desk beside me. And as my phone flew across the office from hanging up with this person, the other person never looked up because he's used to my shenanigans, But I said, I'm gonna walk outside for just a minute, and we have a big trash can out there, and I like to kick that trash can a lot when I'm alone, just big plastic trash can, get it out, And I didn't kick.
I'm envisioning Office Space where they beat the crap out of the printer.
50% of the staff is in Alcoholics Anonymous, so that tell you right there. But I walked outside, didn't kick the trash can. I looked at it, And I just said a little prayer, and I went, I got to breathe a little bit. And stood there for a second. And I said, I think I'm going to call my sponsor. I didn't react with the employee. He left. And then I did that after it was just me and the other guy in there. But he, when I walked back in, the other guy sitting there, program guy, and he goes, man, sounds like somebody needs to call their sponsor. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do, dude. I got chastised a little bit. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to do that. He goes, why don't you just go ahead and leave now, and then you'll have plenty of time to talk to him. I was like,
Surprising until you put a rock in your
scared
pocket.
that other person,
Right. Put a rock
but
and drop the rock.
but all that being said, I did call him. I talked to him on the way here, and when I hung up, I went, all that went on. The old me, drinking never came into my mind. Was I aggravated? Yes. Did it last very long? No. Did it almost cost me an iPhone? Yes, it did. I almost broke that one. I thought it would have broke. But all that being said, there is some progress there, because the old days, I'd have burned it to the ground. Instead, 15 minutes,
There you
pretty
go.
well over it. Moving
Progress,
on.
not perfection.
Progress.
Is that higher power?
And having that little guy with the beard beside me going, hey, man, call your sponsor. Like, thanks, buddy.
It's kind of like the conscious people, like
It really is, though.
devil's advocate and the,
Right.
Well, and God doing for us, I walked outside and I kind of just said a prayer and went, you need to calm down, dude. Like, and just catching my breath. And I was already calming down, but I was like, yeah, I need to call Bobby. And I walked back in. It was right at the end of the day. And I mean, as soon as I did, he said that. And I was like, yeah, I got it. God,
Did you ever-
you don't have to tell this guy to tell me to.
Did you ever ask yourself what your part of it was?
Yes, I did.
Couldn't come up with nothing.
Well, I was told to take 2 days and think about that before I respond with this person. So, but
They're gonna forget all about it within 2 days.
Nah, well, they're not going to get to, because they're in the wrong on this. This isn't something I did. This was something they chose to do. They've been doing over and over again, and it's not really anything I did. But they're kind of forcing my hand on it. So I was told to take 48 hours and calmly deal with it instead of how I would like to.
It's ironic you brought that up, though. Like, did you take the time
Yeah.
to figure out what your part in it was? And that again, for me, that's all higher power.
Yeah,
Because,
that's God restoring us to
I
sanity.
did not have that when I was drinking. I did not. I was going to get my point across. I didn't care what my part in it was. Like, you were wrong. And if I was ever going to admit that I was right, you may as well hook me up to an oxygen tank and, throw me in the hospital bed because I was not admitting. Even if I knew or had an inclination I was in the wrong, there's no way I was admitting that. But you can do that. I can do that today.
And this particular situation, I'm this guy's boss, but I have an owner that I work for. And so this situation had already been cleared up with the owner and myself the day before, and we were both in agreement on it. Well, this guy didn't like that answer. So he chose to go to the owner with a sob story, and then the owner didn't bother telling me that the situation had changed. And this fellow just walked in and told me, you're going to do this, and walked out and slammed the door.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You probably should have gave him a hug.
That only
That's
happens
right.
to
The
me
owner called
30 or
me.
40 times a day.
The owner called me, because that's how I found my phone, because it was on the other side of the office under the coffee thing. And when it was ringing, and he said, I know what we talked about. I changed my mind. I know you're pissed. That was the text. Actually, he sent me a text, and he goes, I just need you to help me out on this. And I was like, okay. That's all I texted. But
Well, sometimes our only part in anything is just letting it get to us.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
giving somebody what it.
Or reacting,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
Bingo.
which that would, God bless.
well, and too, I don't know. It's kind of weird. The old me would have it would have been a big confrontation. I didn't say anything. He left, and then I'm sitting in the office, with my buddy, but nobody else.
Well, think about our society we live in, right? Let's just say I don't know, the 1800s. And some of the things that we entertain us, whether it be the topic of a book or the topic of a movie or, heaven forbid in the 1700s, the topic of a painting. But a lot of those things are those emotions that get to our very core. And that's why they're so successful. That's why people spend part of their hard-earned money on this form of entertainment, is because it is some of these things that get to our very core. And we have a really good advantage in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, because some of these things that affect, I don't know, 6-7 billion other people on the planet, they don't us. We don't have those luxuries. We have to live on a whole nother plane. And boy, that just sounds deep as shit, doesn't it?
It does.
But in all honesty, we have to live on a different plane. Our life is not a movie. Our life is not a song. We're not going for that.
You mean it's not for real?
Well, I mean, it can be, I guess. Have you ever been like, you put on your headphones or earbuds nowadays, and you're running through the neighborhood or jogging through or at the gym, Chris, I'll use, and you whatever's
None of
going
that
on,
running stuff.
Everything that's going on those earbuds, you're listening to Welcome to the Jungle, and they're getting after it on there, right? And you're running through, and you for some reason you think all these other people are listening to your music. Look, I'm the coolest shit in the world. They hear Slash playing in the background. Then they're not,
Right.
And it takes being grounded in a power greater than yourself to realize that that is my problem, whatever it is, and I've got to have God help me fix it, because it has upset me. Mm-hmm. It's gotten to that point where it's disturbed me. I think we call it on paper.
When I am disturbed.
Yeah.
And to backtrack on that, what you said, did
I'm not getting on to
part
you,
in it?
Matt.
No, I know. But you're right on that. I do look into that these days, and that was part of the let's wait 48 hours before we address the situation, because I want to review it all the way up through my mind and the things that have happened and go, where'd I go wrong? Where'd I go right? And I never did that in the past.
Oh, that's
my experience waiting at least 24 hours and praying, and I wake up with a whole different perspective, and the old me would just react out of instinct, and then now I'm creating more problems and more, But, I mean, half the time I wake up and I'm like, that's the dumbest shit I could have thought in my entire life. This is the dumbest. Like, I have sit here and squandered all this time, all this emotion on dumb shit.
Yeah, and it's
I'm
weird.
not calling your
No.
dumb.
And if it was a personal thing where it's like, hey, I'll just walk off, on the street, or somebody I knew, but with it being a business deal and you have to deal with that person as an employee, it becomes, the lines get a little blurred, and it's like, where does my behavior need to be here? Ego aside, and so, and Bobby's right, man. He knows me too. He's like, 48 hours, man. So I'm good with it.
How about you mentioned going from 0 to 100, like how often would you say, versus going back and looking at, prior to being in recovery now to,
I'll give you a good example. About 2 years before I went to treatment, I'm in the lawn care business, right? And this was back in the day, and I'm in some state of intoxication. I don't know what. It's the middle of the day, and I've got a bunch of crews working, and my mower slid off a property into a ditch, and it got stuck, which is pretty common. He usually just wave one of the other guys. We got a strap, pull us out. Well, this guy was also in a state of intoxication. He also was a pleasant fellow like myself.
So y'all are both at work in a state of intoxication.
On a lawnmower.
Whole crew.
Lovely.
I had 2 trucks running, and it was.
You
remember that van that Cheech and Chong drove with the smoke and the cop?
Up in smoke.
Oh, yeah.
I had 2 of those pulling grass trailers, but I was down in the ditch, and the guy pulled up, and for whatever reason, instead of just hooking it up, he looked down and said, "You dumb MF." And that was all it took, and I went up the hill and headbutted him right in the nose, broke his nose, and he went to the emergency room. And my little helper was standing beside me, and he goes, "What just happened?" And I was like, "He got his nose broke." And, yeah, that's how fast that happens. And then I had to go apologize to him because my wife at the time was like, "You're a butthole. You need to go up there and tell him you're sorry." So I had to go up there, and he had popsicle sticks in his nose. I'm like, "I'm sorry." So,
Your wife made you tell her?
She was giving me a guilt trip. And
Higher
I did
power.
feel bad.
Higher power.
No. Not a higher power, because
Higher
court separated
authoritative.
that power. The judge said we don't, yeah. But,
I like that you have incorporated the pause.
yes,
It's
been
important.
a big deal for
Mind
me.
the gap.
Yeah, I didn't pause at all long enough to step off that mower. I paused for about 5 steps. Is how long it took me. Yeah, I mean, just totally no thought at all. And that's how I lived my life for a long time.
So, Chris, how long do you? And the reason I ask this is because I know you had an incident yesterday, and we don't have to talk about it on the air. But,
I mean,
you
we
know,
can if we need to.
We had something,
What?
something that got up under Chris's crawl yesterday. You know, how long do you hang on to that?
I up until the meeting, really about 30 minutes prior to the meeting. But I festered on that for probably a good 5 hours. So, you know, what Mike's talking about is, and I won't go too heavily in details, but you know, I live out there on the base, and I took all the kids to the pool. Got 3 girls and a boy. Y'all have seen them all, and we get to the pool, and I noticed some human feces in the male restroom, and it's sitting in front of the stand-up urinal. And then my girls go into the women's restroom, and there's, you know, human feces kind of spread all over the toilet seats. And so they take pictures and they send it to me. And, you know, I posted it on this little Facebook page, right?
That's confirmed it was human.
Oh, it was definitely human. Right. Yeah. I mean, I didn't get close enough to, you know, test it, but no, it was definitely
Did you
human.
at least taste it?
Yeah, no. The smell was, you know, is bad enough. But anyway, so I posted it on this page just to kind of bring awareness and, you know, let parents know, hey, you know, pay attention to your children, kind of deal. And this woman got on there and called me a pervert and asked me why I was in the women's restroom and called me an asshole for being in there. I'm like, grow up. You know, like I've got 3 daughters, you know, so I had to make that very apparent right off the get-go, you know. But she was like, you know, you're just gonna sit here and post it, you piece of shit. And I'm just like, wow. But I did. I let that fester. And the old me, and I shared this in the meeting last night, the old me would have found out where she lived and probably would have taken a dump in her driveway and probably slung it like a monkey, you know, right across her, you know, probably the front of her doorstep. But I did. I let that stuff fester. And then by the time I got to the meeting and we're talking about it, I was like, I mean, was it really worth it? You know? And I did. I tried calling my sponsor. And,
as mad as you were at the meeting last night, the rest of us giggled pretty good at it. I mean, at the story. I know you weren't feeling it. But.
And I was completely prepared to walk into the men's bathroom at the club and you know, play a prank. And then Chris was in there. I mean, it's God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself.
I probably would have went from 0 to 100 had I went in that restroom and at the
Probably
club.
good.
You know,
Yeah.
I think it does though, man. I think like we got Mike and I interviewed Bobby last night, my sponsor, and
good
he did
interview.
a bonus episode.
Yeah. Good interview.
And the biggest thing for Bobby, for me, is he's totally not that I know that he can get irritated with stuff. Believe me. But he handles it a lot better than I do. And most of the time, you'll never know that he's irritated. And so when they say, you know, look for a sponsor with somebody that has something you want, I want to be able to keep myself in control, even if other people, you know what I mean?
Right.
To the point other people aren't aware of it. And I've gotten a lot better with that. And most of that is him going, let's wait a week and talk about it. And I go, no, I want to do it
right
now.
now.
Well, then we'll wait 2 weeks. You know?
So, has anybody ever had a situation where you paused, you didn't react, and then the situation, like, it actually went complete 180 where it totally, like, whereas the person on the other end ended up apologizing and coming to make right the situation, and you're like, oh, well, no, I was in the wrong too, and then you kind of, like, have a bond moment.
And I think that happens with people too, is other people a lot of times in quick situations where tempers are, you know, people are irritated, a lot of people will go back and go, man, I shouldn't act like that. And given time, instead of throwing gas on it, we're both able to go, my bad, you know, and go on. So,
from a marriage standpoint, I can say that that's night and day today, because now I can see my wrongs, you know, before, you know, sometimes whether I'm real quick to bring them to the table, you know, and acknowledge them right there off the bat. Very quickly am I able to be like, you know what, I overreacted from that. You know, I'm sorry. But you know, even little stuff with kids, you know, coworkers. But it's huge with coworkers these days. You know, because you're used to going from 0 to 100, and you have a disagreement, and you know, most of us we're stubborn, right? So we're not going to admit we were wrong. You apologize to me, all right?
Right.
Establish dominance. No, that's not the case today, not at all. So it's actually a very good thing to be able to admit when I'm in the wrong today rather than where I was before.
Yeah.
And that also comes with working the rest of the steps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, you get to step 10, and they talk about the spot check inventory in step 10 and all that stuff, and it's a good idea, you know, to practice that. And I by no means am the perfect AA. I'm just not. But I will tell you that I try to let everything go right that minute. You know, when it comes to the kids, my kids, you know, I can't sometimes. But even with counseling from my sponsor and reaching out to other men in AA, right? I think even with them, I can probably let it go within 2 or 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just, it cannot dominate. It completely bogs down productivity.
Sure.
And,
Yes.
And I don't mean to sound like Mr. Productive or all this other stuff, but all of that stuff that I'm holding on to completely bogs down productivity. I mean, I rank it up there because it's a spiritual sickness.
Right.
For me, right? And I rank it up there with those things like the flu. Man, the flu can really put a bug in my day. And I have been blessed in this life to care for people who depend on me. I have to be there. I don't have a choice. I can't roll over one morning and say, hey, you know, last night was too tough, or I watched the game. I don't have a choice in the matter, and I have to be there for the people that depend on me. And spiritual sickness is just another one of those I throw right off into the rest of it, right? I have to let it go right then. Even if I say, you know what, I got to let it go right now. God's going to take care of this. I have to move on. And there have been a couple instances within the past, 5 years maybe, that it has really got to the point where I hung on to it, you know, and all of those are work-related. But I really hung on to it, and it affected everyone, you know. And I got a text about noon today, you know. My granddaughter running 104.7 fever, right?
Man.
And she's not the first grandkid. So, you know, the first grandkid everybody goes crazy about, you know, but she's not the first grandkid. But I don't love her any less than I do my grandson, who fell on the fireplace Sunday night, busted his eye up, had to have stitches, the whole shebang, right? ER. He's in the ER, power's out at the store, 10, 15 people calling me. I got, you know, I'm the hub for information from the store to everybody out in Neverland, you know. And but I got that text today about my granddaughter, and I immediately just looked at it, and the first thing I thought about was I might need to leave here and go straight to the hospital, which is, you know, they don't need me there. I'm not. Yeah. They do not need my services at the hospital, okay? But my second reaction was, you know, God's going to take care of this. Little kids often run really high fevers. I remember that from whenever my kids were little, but God's going to take care of this. I'll take care of the business at hand, and then I'll check on my granddaughter and see what's going on and move forward, you know, with my whatever I've got to do, you know. And those kind of things are what bog me down today, you know, the important stuff, you know, not the stuff that's going to keep me spiritually sick, like I'm pissed off. I've got to get over it. You know, I've had people piss me off at work, and they can tell, and they'll say, "You're pissed, aren't you?" And my answer is always, "Yeah, but I'm going to get over it." And the minute I say that, I start to get over it. And that's God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, because I came to believe that He can. Mm-hmm. And He's been doing it ever since. And it, you know, there ain't a whole lot going on in this. Once I lost all my hair, my thought process has really,
Your thoughts went with your hair?
There's nothing much to burn off anymore. So.
I read the coolest thing today in one of my meditations. You know, it was talking about worry and doubt and how it's counterproductive to life and whatnot. And but it said, if you're something to this effect, it wasn't maybe these exact words, but if you're managing your own life, you should absolutely be worried.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, that hit home. If I am controlling my own life, I'm controlling, you know, trying to control outcomes, all of it, then I absolutely should be worried. But if I turn it over to God.
And He rewards the effort. You know what I mean? Like I feel like God knows if I'm making an effort to change my attitude or change. And that was something you asked me like going to 100. Here's the other one that I used to do and I don't do anymore. And I was just thinking about this. If one thing happened with one person, I was just machine gun everybody all day.
Right.
I didn't care.
Everybody's in the
bleeds over
crossfire.
into every area of your life.
Wife, owner, boss, employee, whatever it was, it didn't matter. It was like I was looking for something to burn the whole day to the ground. And like, I'm able to focus now, even when I'm stewing about something else maybe that's going on that I'm trying to work through, with other stuff going on, and just handle that the way it needs to be handled.
It just goes back to what Mike said about that productivity. You know, like it gets in the way of every bit of that.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just sitting there festering. That's the one thing on your mind.
If I am to be of maximum service to my fellow man and to God, I, one, have turned my will and my life over to the care of God. So he's got me. I don't need to be thinking about me 24/7. So if something comes along that causes me to think about me, I've got to change that so that I can be of maximum service to God and my fellows. Now, that sounds really deep. Sounds really spiritual. It sounds like something, but realistically, it's none of that. It's just I've got stuff to do. I've got people to take care of. God has placed me in a position in life to where I am responsible these days. And I used to didn't be, you know. And if people aren't in this position or they're not responsible for a whole lot of human beings, there's no way, you know, a bus driver is responsible for a lot of human beings. Yeah. Now, if they're pissed off at their spouse and they're like, I'm getting home right now, and they're running every single railroad track with your kids on there, okay, that's just a simple way of putting it. So, you know, and I hope that's not happening.
No.
I'm sure it don't. I'm sure it never happens, you know. But what I'm saying is it gets in the way of me doing what I'm supposed to be responsible for. So, you know, I want to read something here out of the big book, if y'all don't mind. Is that okay, the big book?
Yeah.
I'm always.
Y'all remember the big book, that thing we read back in the day?
Is that the blue
That
thing?
story. Yeah.
And it says this. When we became alcoholics crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? And that comes from we agnostics. And just around the table, group talk about what y'all think about that.
I mean, I firmly believe that, and like I said, I learned it. I don't want to say the hard way, but I mean, by seeing the results, you know, and realizing there is a God, obviously, because there was no other way for me to just getting better in my own life with myself. You know, the only change in that was admitting, okay, there's somebody bigger than me, and I'm going to put some faith and action into like this relationship and see where that happens. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
for me, it was accepting the depravity of my state and that powerlessness and, oh shit, if I continue down this path, I am going to drink myself to death eventually. Might not be today, might not be tomorrow. Or the fact that even if I put it down for 3 months, if I start back up again, I will eventually drink myself stupid or dead. And so it started there. And the God I was serving was an idiot because it was me. And it was just, there is a God, I ain't it. So now let's investigate. And where do you go from there? And, you know, through meetings and allowing a sponsor to come into my life and give me suggestions and working those steps, I found God. And then, you know, in step 11, it goes further into, now that you found him, or the God of your understanding, improve your conscious contact with him. And then that's when you go deeper into the spirituality of it, right? You get to, basically it was, we introduced you to God. Now, you know, form a friendship, form a relationship with him, go deeper, learn more. And again, these weren't overnight matters for me. This was a lot of overnights for me to like even come And I am not where I need to be by any means, but I am damn sure not where I started when I walked into the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Amen. Amen.
So for me, it was, he is everything to me because had he not been, I wouldn't be sober today. I just wouldn't. I wouldn't be sitting around this table right here with you weirdos. I just wouldn't. There's no way it would.
You think a little over a year ago, you'd be sitting doing
No,
talking?
absolutely not. No, I would.
Podcast on sobriety.
I'd probably see Ernie up at Walmart trying to duck around. I'd be trying to sneak drinks, and hide from him. I just saw him at Cafe USA
I
yesterday.
haven't seen him in a minute. Where's he been?
Cafe USA yesterday was a spotting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Definitely
Well,
saw him.
Ernie
But
Spotty.
Speaking of spotting, I think you were working with a sponsee, but our other friend Jay came into a meeting. the
Yeah,
other
he
day.
sent me a picture of Bigfoot.
nice. No, but he's absolutely everything to me today because, like I said, I'm still sober. I'm still doing the things that I never would have saw myself doing. I mentioned in a meeting the other day. I don't know. I think it was Thursday about just we were wrapping things up, and I said, really. Not just for the newcomers, but if you have 3 days of sobriety, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, 30 years, whatever it be, just go back and reflect on your time and just your short period of sobriety. And I mean, that's all God to me.
Oh, yeah.
That's 100% all God. And just to think, all I had to do was have just a little bit of willingness to believe that there was a power greater than myself. That had just changed everything for me. So I'm a firm believer. So,
What you got, Jill?
God is everything. God is everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's what I believe.
Okay. Keeping it simple. I like it.
I had a guy that you guys all know. He just had a year as well. He's been on here, Ben. We were talking when he came up on his birthday, and I said, man, how do you feel? Like, it was the day of his birthday. We were at work, and I was like, how's it feel, dude? Like, just egging him on a little bit. And he's like, man, I know everybody says I'm doing better and stuff, but I don't feel a lot different. I know things are getting better. And I said, well, let me ask you a question. I said, what about this person? And I named somebody that had about 6 months. And he goes, oh, yeah, man, look how far they've come. And I went, what about this person? Somebody had 4 months. He goes, dude, you remember when they came in, how bad they looked at me? And I was like, yeah. And I said, what about this person? They had like 10 months. And he goes, oh, man, they're doing great. And I was like, you're doing the same thing, bro. You just can't see it. Yeah. And he goes, I do feel better, but it's if you don't think it's working, look around you a little while.
I remember the very first time that I heard him share. And he said,
pretty powerful.
Still to this day, it was one of the most profound things that I've ever heard because he was
raw,
talking about
honest.
how when he takes a drink, somebody else puts his shoes on and takes over his life. And I'm like,
yeah,
that is
just pretty deep.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
deep.
just remember, and I still remember that. And I was like, that.
That's that whole story with that guy was God doing things for him, and to get kicked out of a house, to lose your job for drinking, to wreck your vehicle, and like all the people around him that got rid of him, that fired him from the job, that kicked him out of the house and all that, then they're calling their AA people going, can y'all help this dude? We really like him. He needs some help. We had to fire him and kick him out of his house, but we hate for something bad to happen. And I'm like, we got it. Yeah. So, and isn't that crazy? I mean, where else does that happen, but, and sure enough, he stuck with it, but
Yeah, I mean, I think of some other folks in the program, and I went and visited my grandmother for a minute today, and some of the ladies that are in our group go to church with her, and I was just explaining, like, if you would have seen Michelle when she first got here, and I'm like, I mean, this is evidence of God. Like, she allowed God to come in her life, and she is a completely different person. And I think it's amazing. I just love stories like that, just to see it and, get a minute to kind of participate in it too.
And,
hopefully in a positive way.
And sometimes, though, I think as you go along, I lose sight of, like, the growth. It's a little slower these days, and I think that's normal.
Your own
can,
personal growth?
Yes.
Yeah.
You guys probably can attest to that more as you go along. But there is growth, and things are getting a lot better. And I literally can tell you at 5 years, I absolutely love the way my life is today. I love it, man. It's been a long road, but I'm just tickled. I'm tickled with the way everything's going. It's all in a good direction, but it just always, for me, that's the deal, man, is sitting in meetings and somebody comes in 2 weeks in and they're just jacked up, and then they get a 90-day chip and they go, oh, I'm alive, you know, and then that's God, man. That's all it is.
I think for me, when I finally got to the point where I could be grateful for some of the things that I didn't get, that I just thought I absolutely had to have, or I could see where there was periods that, like, okay, this moment sucks, but on the other side of it, I could see exactly why it had to play out the way it did.
A lesson or
and
a
then
blessing.
you can be grateful for those things.
Yeah.
Even
my sponsor constantly reminds me of that. The big stuff that I labeled bad in quotations, he always goes, that had to happen, dude. To get you here today, that's what had to happen. And I go, you're right, I know. And now I laugh about it. I'm like, I'm so glad that stuff happened, but I wasn't at the time.
Well,
I love how Joe says always, like, he tells a story about, you know, nothing's either good or it's bad. Like, if we put labels on everything, but then he tells a story about the army people or the war or what.
I love Joe B because one of my favorite lines, and this is talking about sponsors and not having your sponsor handy. And I was going through a divorce, and I've been married for 22 years. And Joe B's at a meeting one day, and I sit down beside him, and I'm just struggling. And I'm like, man, I'm going through a divorce. And he goes, really? How long you been married? And I said, man, 22 years, you know. And I'm almost like crying. And Joe goes, I was married 22 years too. And I was like, really? And he goes, yep, it just wasn't all to the same woman. And I was like, okay, never mind.
I was married 22 as well. So, but that segues pretty good into our next episode, which is going to be Chris C here came up with this idea, and he shot me a text. And anybody that wants to hear a subject discussed on the show, please shoot me a text, send me an email, smoke signal, however we can get information to me. But going to any link to get it. And I think the important thing in that whole phrase is the it. Going to any link to get it. Because if I'm a newcomer and I come into the rooms and I hear somebody, are you willing to go to any link to get it? And I'm like, what the hell's it? I got to start at the bottom. I got to get it. So that's what we're going to discuss on the next episode. Appreciate everyone coming out and look forward to talking to you guys next week. For the Grouch and the Brainstorm, I'm Mike.